One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I absolutely love whenever I get to answer someone's question here on this podcast. It's why I enjoyed our coaching series, because it's just so much fun to engage with members of this community who have actual questions, because I know y'all have tons of questions. I see them all the time in our Facebook group, on the YouTube channel. You've replied to me through emails and you've said, Crystal, I love this idea, but this is my specific problem, or this is how I'm experiencing creating content. Can you help me? And so today, this is one of those segments that kind of goes away and it comes back, goes away and it comes back, but it is called Questions from the Community. And we actually had an email write in not too long after we were talking about selling in your content. And I'm really excited to talk about this today because I think it's the perfect combination of content strategy and selling and marketing and just all the things. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach you how to start, launch, and market your content with confidence. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of content creation, this is the show that will help be your time-saving shortcut. So let's get right to it, shall we? So I sent out an email in my Friday emails. If you are not on our email list, I encourage you to go and sign up. You can go to my website, crystalprofit.com, and go all the way to the bottom, and there will be a form for you to get on our email list. Because what I will do from time to time is I will prompt my audience, which I encourage you to do this too. It's how you get that valuable feedback. But what I said is hit reply and let me know what questions you have about selling on your podcast or YouTube channel, how often to sell, and any other questions or topics you want to see covered. So let me pause right here. And before I actually give you what someone wrote in about, I want to say that this is another great way for you to get content ideas. So it's great to get feedback on your content if you want to know, hey, is this resonating? Is this not? But if you ever want to send an email to your list where you throw out like, hey, here's 4 ideas that I'm thinking about trying in the content, let me know which one resonates most with you. This works. It's amazing. Even if you only get a few replies, because I have a few thousand people on my list, but I'm not getting hundreds and hundreds of replies, but y'all, 20 replies is a pretty big deal. Like that's a pretty successful survey to your audience. And so I encourage you, try this out. Try this out. It works so well. So the person that wrote in is Amy Connell. Amy, I just want to, I have a huge smile on my face just saying your name because you have been a long time member of our community. Amy is from the Graced Health podcast. I'm going to link in the show notes to a few of the episodes that Amy has done right here on this podcast. She is a fitness coach and she has a book that she's promoting. We're going to talk about that in a second, but I just want you to go listen to Amy's episodes and go listen to her podcast. So let's dive into Amy's question. So think about the prompt that we said, right? Hit reply. Let me know what questions you have about selling in your podcast or on your YouTube channel. This is what Amy said. You've talked in the past about having one focus for several weeks, then a different one with what you're promoting, whether it's digital content or etc. I've been trying to do the same thing with a book promotion. So what does that look like? Such a great question, Amy. I think that there will be multiple people that are listening to this that have a similar question. Maybe it's not about a book. Maybe it's about a digital product. Maybe it's about a one-on-one coaching service. Like there's so many different ways that you can apply this to all kinds of offers. And so I just wanted to say thank you again for your awesome question, Amy, because it sparked so many ideas that I think that I don't often come forward saying, oh, these are marketing basics that I know that other people may not be aware of that don't have a marketing background, have taken consumer behavior courses, professional selling courses. Like these are all the things that sometimes I forget that this is the way my brain works because I've studied this stuff literally for years. I've studied these things. So I want to take a lot of this down to the ground floor. We're taking it to the very basics today because I feel like sometimes I skim over that. Sometimes I try to give you the shiny, sexy strategy or the thing that I have seen other people do. So I tried it, it worked, and now I'm teaching it to you. Let's go back to the basics, okay? So if you are trying to promote a book, a product, an event, whatever it is that you're promoting, the reason why it's important to focus on one thing, not 17 different things, is because the message of what you're trying to promote gets watered down if you talk about 3 to 4 things that you're trying to promote in one episode or blog post or video. So we're not only talking about all kinds of different offers today, we're also talking about all the different types of content, right? Because maybe you're listening, you're like, well, I have a YouTube channel, or I just have a blog, or I just have a podcast, or I'm just trying to grow my email list. Like it all applies the same way. I want you to talk about one thing in your content for multiple periods of time. So instead of shoving 3 or 4 things, oh, look, I have a book and I have a digital course and I have coaching products and I have a live event coming up. No, you can't talk about all those things in one episode. Don't do that. Don't do that. Instead, I want you to talk about one offer at a time consecutively for a 3 to 4 week period, because it's going to get you so much further faster. And now I know some of you, I know what your reaction just was. You're like, Crystal, that sounds boring. I don't want to say the same things 3 to 4 times every single week, because aren't people going to get sick of hearing me? I don't want to talk about it that much. I'm going to bore myself listening to it. Nope. Hang on. Because if we go back to the basics of marketing and advertising, the overall rule is you can't put one message one time out in front of an audience and expect every single one of them to buy. And I think this is the problem that I had in the very beginning of my content too. I thought, well, I said it 2 episodes ago. I don't want to say it. I'm bugging them. This is legitimately what I would tell myself. I'm like, I don't want to annoy my audience. I don't want to bug my audience. So I'll mention it one time and then the sales will just come in. I'm just going to talk about it once. And then I'm going to I'm going to watch my bank account go up because I talked about it once in this one episode. Like, I'm laughing at myself because this is what I thought. It's not right, y'all. Maybe you're thinking this way too because you haven't been exposed to these strategies before. It's okay. It's why you're listening to this podcast. I'm here to guide you through what it's like to sell in your content. And the way I can make this most textualized is for you to think about your own buying habits when you're trying something new. Okay, let's pretend that you are listening to a podcast, reading a blog post, or watching a YouTube video. It's likely that you're not going to hear this person for the first time. Let's take it even further back. Let's pretend you just stumbled upon this podcast or this blog or this YouTube, and they start talking about their book, or let's talk about a movie or a podcast, right? They're trying to sell you on something one time. You're not immediately going to be like, oh my gosh, there's a $2,000 product that I've never heard of. I don't know who this person is. Absolutely. Yes, I'm going to buy it. I mean, maybe that is your buying behavior. That is not mine. That is not mine. Even if it's a book, even if it's a $20 book, I'm like, wait, is it any good? I'm not going to buy something. Like, this is what I will typically do. I see something, first thing I'm going to do is Google it, okay? Because I'm already in an online space. I'm like, you know what? I don't know what this is. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to Google this person. I'm going to Google this product. Maybe if it's in an industry that I'm familiar with, like I have peers, I would say, hey, what do you think about this? Have you heard about this person? I actually did this recently. I heard about a template, like category, catalog, library, whatever you want to call it, for Canva users. Like, they have all these different templates. And I knew that one of my friends who's in the online space, she uses a company. And I was like, well, maybe it's the same company. Maybe her company's better. Maybe this company's better. And so I asked her. I didn't go sign up for it. I immediately was like, oh, you know what? I know who would know about this. I'm going to text them and see if they know, because I didn't immediately go sign up for it. Or maybe you hear about something, you Google it, and then you're like, you know what? I'm not convinced. I'm going to go look at reviews. I'm going to go see if this thing is any good. And every single one of these are touch points that you're having with this product. So again, I didn't hear about something one time because the message was put in front of me. I hear about it, and then I'm going to Google it, and then I'm going to ask somebody, and then I'm going to look up reviews about it. Like, that's 3 different touch points from the original touch point. So that's 4 total that I have, and I still haven't even gotten to a buying decision. So I want you to think about your own habits when it comes to you listening to a podcast. So Amy, specifically, I'm talking to you now because maybe you listen to podcasts and you have heard people promote books, and maybe you've bought some of these books. I want you to sit down and think back, like create a timeline in your brain or write it down if you need to, and say, okay, I remember I was introduced to this person on this other podcast, and then I found out they had a podcast. So I went and listened to it, and then I listened to about 2 or 3 episodes, and I realized, oh my gosh, that is the book that I need. And then I went and bought it. Is that what it looked like? This is how it's looked like for me a few times with authors, but it was probably 4 to 5 touch points of them mentioning their book, why it would be perfect for me. And so I think that at the end of the day, this is my rule. I always go back to, I ask myself, what do I do when I'm buying something, when I'm making a purchase? And how can that be applied to my content? Because I realize I am not you. I am not a member of this audience in a weird way. I guess like I kind of am if I go back and I edit and I listen to the thing, but I am not someone who is entrenched in listening to this content because I'm not in the same place that I was whenever I started this. This is getting into like a weird out of body experience situation where I'm talking about I'm here, I'm in this community, I'm not part of the audience, but I've created the content for the audience. So anyway, you get what I'm saying. But this is my specific consumer behavior, okay? And maybe there are people out here that are like, no, Crystal, I listen to a podcast. If I find something, I hear it, I buy it. That's awesome. But I know the good majority of people aren't that way because why would we have sites like Yelp or Goodreads? Why would these exist if they're not important to people? Or Amazon reviews, right? People want to know, is something good? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my money? Okay. And also in my experience, going back to talking about things in your content that you're trying to sell, in my experience, the more expensive the product, the more you need to talk about it. And the reason why that is because, like I said, for me personally, I'm not someone who's going to stumble upon a podcast, hear about someone that has a $5,000 mastermind and say, oh, this is exactly what I need. Let me drop $5,000 on this. I'm not going to. I'm going to listen to that person. Okay, here, I actually have a perfect example. Amy Porterfield, y'all have heard me talk about her and all of her gloriousness and all the things that she's helped me do in my business. She has a program that is $2,000. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I can afford that. This was way back in the day. This was, probably 2018 when I first got exposed to really following Amy and her podcast. And I was like, I don't have that kind of money to drop right now, but I'm going to get the most out of all of her free stuff. That's legitimately the thought that I had because I was at the point like, is this really what I'm doing? Like, how's this going to work? And I remember I was listening to her for a long time. So when the time came around for me to buy her product, I had been listening to her for about 10 to 12 months, easily. So I'd heard over and over and over again this message about her program, and it's called Digital Course Academy. I'd heard about it so many times, and I remember thinking, okay, the more exposure that I have to a message, the more comfortable I felt making a purchase. Because by the time I got to like the checkout page, I was like, you know what? I know that this is the right decision for me. I've heard the testimonials. I know exactly what's in this program, and I just felt really good about it. So if you have an expensive product that's $500 or more, then you need to take that into consideration. Maybe your runway for how long you're going to promote your thing needs to be 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks that you're talking about it. Again, this is all subjective, and it comes down to who your audience is, what their buying power is, what kind of strategy you want to have over the long haul. Like there's a lot of things to consider, but for the good majority of people that are listening to this, I just want you to think about the more exposure you need is equivalent to how expensive the thing is that you're selling. If you're selling a $20 book on Amazon, you don't need to talk about something for 6 to 8 weeks before you really start saying you need to go buy this. You can start talking about that on day one, like first episode. And you can say, I have a book, here it is, blah, blah, blah. Here's how do you go buy it. That's a simple one. But if you are talking about a product that is $500 or more, maybe you need to say, hey, here it is, here's what it is, and this is really how you can go buy it, and this is why you need it. And I actually have some questions for you to consider here in a second, because I know, again, y'all are like, well, how do you talk about it? And it's like 4 different ways. I don't even know. So this is actually, I went ahead of myself. So here's your next steps, okay? I want you to consider all the things that we just talked about. We just talked about consumer behavior, how you should really break up how often you talk about one thing into 3 or 4 weeks and not talk about anything else. I think you should focus on, I'm just going to talk about Amy, for you, I'm just going to talk about my book promotion for 3 to 4 weeks. I'm not going to promote, try to get people to go follow me on Instagram. I'm not going to try to get them on my email list. I'm not going to try to do any of that. I'm just going to be laser focused on promoting this book for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, so now your next steps, what does that look like? Okay, the first thing I want you to consider, Amy, if you're going to be promoting your book again, I want you to think about that specific offer. For everybody else, I want you to think about the next offer that you want to promote. Maybe it's a digital course, maybe it's a live event, maybe it's a virtual event, maybe it's, 17 other things that we haven't talked about or mentioned today. Maybe it's just your lead magnet. Maybe you're not even selling anything like dollars that's worth anything, but it's your lead magnet. Okay, I want you to get this offer in your mind and ask yourself the following questions. 1, how can I talk about this offer in 4 different ways? And I'm just using 4 because we've said, hey, let's talk about this 3 or 4 times. So I want you to lay out 4 different ways that you could talk about this offer. And the 2 ways that I have for you to approach this is 1, point of view. So what is a different angle? What is a different point of view, a perspective that you can take on talking about this? Can you talk about it from a beginner standpoint? This is kind of how I can look at my content. I can say, okay, you have the beginner, someone who has never created a podcast or YouTube or a blog post, and they have no idea where to start. Then you have someone kind of in the middle. They just launched, they're getting going. And then at the end, you have someone that is looking to monetize and strategy and be a lot more advanced. And then one more view could be someone who is they're doing this as an agency. They're doing this for someone else. So those are kind of the different segments of my audience. And those points of view really matter, because when you're looking at it from all these different angles, you're letting people know that this isn't a one-size-fits-all product. You're saying this is for this specific type of product or person that is in your audience, and you want them to know, hey, this is for you. And if you're in this type of situation, this is why I love testimonials. Testimonials are freaking gold, y'all. Testimonials just mean everything. You can create so much content around testimonials, social proof, reviews that you get on your podcast. These are so important when it comes to marketing. Amy, if you have book reviews, you could read some of your Amazon book reviews and say, hey, we want to talk about your book, or, I'm in quotes, your book, my book. I want to talk about it today. And I'm actually going to read a review that we got on Amazon that was so great because it really talks about this one type of person. You read their review and then you say, if you want to get this book, go to blah, blah, blah. And here's where you go check it out. Okay. That's one approach. The second one, so we kind of talked about points of view. The next one is the segment and audience approach, which kind of these 2 overlap because we just talked about the different buyers that are in my audience, but they are different because I want you to think about the points of view that someone in your audience will have as a beginner, right? So maybe you're not specifically calling them out. Hey, you're a beginner. I would, instead of saying the words beginner, you would say, I know that there's people in this audience that are just starting a podcast. So it's more of the characteristics. So this is the first point for points of view. You're pointing out the characteristics, the experiences, the stories that they're having. And then in the second one, the segmented audience approach, you can just flat out say, hey, beginners in this audience. Hey, those of you that just launched your podcast, I'm speaking to you. You can make a mixture of these 2. You can blend them together. You can kind of see how they overlap anyway. But I want you to think, how can I talk about this in 4 different ways and look at it from point of view and a segmented audience approach? That way you can get kind of the conceptual, okay, these are the people I'm talking to, and this is how I would talk to these different people in this way. They're all going to be right for your products. Let me make that very clear. You're not going to speak to someone that's not a good fit for your product because that's your whole goal. You're trying to sell the thing that you're trying to sell. So don't throw in people in your audience that aren't a good fit for your product. I just want to make that really clear because I have a few programs and they're not right for every member of my audience. I'm not going to talk about profit podcasting. This is my course, right? I'm not going to talk about that to someone who is in like the stages of growing and scaling their podcast because it wouldn't be as helpful for them. I've actually turned down many people that have said, hey, I'm interested in your course. And I'm like, wait, you've already started? You're already scaling? You already have sponsorships? No, you don't need to buy this course. This is a course for people that are just getting started. They've recently launched. It's not for you. They're like, oh, okay. Well, you saved me money. Thanks. But, and people are like, oh my gosh, you tell people not to buy your product? I'm like, yeah, because I don't want them to buy it, see that it's not a good fit for them, and then have a refund. I mean, it's just basic business. Is the more refunds you have, it's not going to look great on your books. So I don't want that to happen. I will tell people this is specifically for you. This is exactly who I'm talking to for this product. All right, so that's number one. That was just question number one. How can I talk about this offer 4 different ways? Number 2, do I use dynamic content that goes away after a specific period of time, or should I use purely focused podcast episodes, blogs, or videos?
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
I love this part because a lot of people don't consider this. You could actually do a combination of the two, but I think that it's just a matter of how you want to promote your thing. Is it a timely offer? Is it an evergreen promotion? And I'm going to be really honest. I was embarrassed going to record this episode. I wrote out all my notes. I'm like looking in Asana and I wrote out the words timely and evergreen promotion. And I was like, I know we've talked about this on the podcast before. Y'all, I went back and looked. I haven't seen anything anywhere about timely and evergreen content. So we're going to be talking about that soon. Spoiler alert, it's coming because this is something that I know that we've talked about it possibly on the YouTube channel, but we need to talk about it on the podcast. We definitely need to bring up timely versus evergreen products, promotions, content. Like it's just something we really need to talk about. And I feel like I have talked about this. So I am going to go back and dig through. I'm like, I know that we've talked about this somewhere. I'm going to go dig through the archives and see if we do have some episodes. So if we do, I'm going to link to them in the show notes. I couldn't find one. But dynamic content. You've heard me talk about this before. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And go back and listen to all of the episodes that we've done about dynamic content, what it is, how to use it, and why it's super, super important. But dynamic content goes away after a while. So if you have Buzzsprout, this is my podcast hosting provider. If you have them, you can use dynamic content where you upload an audio file and you leave that running for 3 to 4 weeks. I love that approach. I love it. I love it. I love it because it gets applied to all of your podcast episodes. So I know I'm speaking specifically to podcasters right now, but you could do dynamic content in your your blogs, or your videos where you can put in your own little ad. I do this you can go to my show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 362. And you can see in the show notes, I have content that's there that is specifically selling. And we've talked about this. We had the recent episode of how often do I sell in my content? Y'all, I'm selling every single time in my blog post that are my show notes. Yeah, if you didn't know that, it's always there. I'm promoting my Buzzsprout affiliate link. I'm promoting my book. I'm promoting the Ultimate Podcast Launch Toolkit. Like, it is always there. Those are evergreen promotions. They are always going to be there. Amy, I recommend that for you. If you have show notes for your podcast, put your book there. Because if someone's listening and then they go to your show notes and they say, oh, she's got a book, cool. Maybe they won't buy the first time they see it, but if they keep going back to your show notes because you're adding value there, I know that people will turn into buyers after they've seen it and they've heard you talk about it. And they're like, oh, okay, now I know I absolutely need to go buy Amy's book. It's going to be super, super valuable to me. So that was dynamic content, right? And that was kind of evergreen content too. I blended that together. But now what I really want to talk about is purely focused episodes, blogs, or videos. So this is when, if you're going into like, I feel like it should be big promotion, little promotion. And that simply means that little promotion is something that is a low ticket offer, let's say less than $50, right? That's what I would call a low ticket offer, $50 and below, whatever it is that you're selling. Then I would say that you could talk about that a lot easier, in an easier way where you can mention it kind of like I did here. It's like, hey, we talked about the book is being sold in my show notes, as well as, which the book is like $20 or less, even for the audiobook. And then you have the Ultimate Podcast Launch Toolkit. That's $37. It's still less than $50. You could talk about that easily in an ad style within your YouTube videos. So I'm thinking about videos now, because I know, like I said, there's podcasters, there's YouTubers in this audience, there's bloggers. And I want you to think about, well, how do I want to approach this? Do I want to center the focus on my book? Now we're going back to Amy again. My book for 3 to 4 weeks, and say, okay, I'm going to put out 4 podcast episodes about who should read this book, but I'm going to apply it in content specific ways. So the 4 pieces of content you're going to put out are about nothing except what is in your book in some form or fashion, or why someone should read that book, or why someone read the book and it changed their life. Like, there's so many different ways that you can do it, but I just want you to think about, do you want that to go away after a certain period of time? That's the dynamic content piece. Or do you want to create something that's purely focused, laser focused on what it is that you're selling? These are the 2 things to consider for that question. All right, question number 3. This is the last one. Should I tease out actual content from the product? Then, hang on, I'm reading this. I'm like, I put content in there way too many times. Should I tease out the actual content from my product to get more people interested? I love this approach. So first, let's go back to Amy's original question, right? Amy's question was about, how do I apply this? How do I sell using a book promotion? My first gut instinct is, could you share some quotes from your book, or even a full chapter on your podcast, to get people to understand if the book is right for them? And I'm not saying a quote like as a review. I'm talking about quotes from your actual book. Maybe you take a chapter or a section and you really hone in on it, and you say, you know what? I'm going to read this section or chapter, and then we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about why I wrote it. We're going to talk about why it's so important. So you're not giving away the whole book on your podcast. I don't recommend you do that. But I do think that it's kind of fun when you can see those behind the scenes of telling the story of, oh, I wrote this chapter because I had this experience in my life, or I wrote it because these principles are super important to me because of these experiences that I had, made me think a different way. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach it. But at the end of the day, I encourage people to give a little bit of their stuff away for free. And so that's for Amy specifically, but for anyone else that's listening, if you have a digital course or you have a live event, like, could you share some of your ideas from a lesson inside your course? Or if you have a live event, can you share a little bit about what people can experience whenever they're there, or some of the things that you're going to cover? If you're going to be one of the keynotes, like, can you share a little bit about what you're going to talk about? Why does this matter? What is the value that someone is going to receive? Or if you have a digital program, Could you share out a PDF to one of your modules? Like, it's super, super simple, and you're not giving away the farm, right? You're just giving away a little bit to get someone interested in buying your thing. And this is one of my favorite approaches because I like to be super generous in my content. I really do. I like to give. If you've been around here a while, you know that I don't shy away from giving you the good content right here on the podcast, in my YouTube channel, on my email list, because I'm a believer in being generous in your content. And guess what? People still buy my programs, sign up for my workshops, grab my book on Amazon, and become a customer, even whenever I'm giving stuff away for free. So don't shy away from it. I think that the more generous you can be in your content, it's kind of like putting good karma out into the world. And I think that it's a great approach for people that are creating content and trying to sell stuff. Oh my gosh, such a great episode. This was so fun. Again, thank you, Amy, for submitting this question. Please go to the show notes for everything that we just covered. I have all the questions listed there. I have all the things that we talked about today. crystalprofit.com/episode 362. And reach out if you have questions that you want to be featured on this podcast. Don't hesitate to email me, reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. But that's all I have for you today. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.